Hello and welcome to In Our Community. My name is Liz Holts and I will be your host for today's show. And I'd like to introduce our guest for today, Sal Dossani, who is the author of A Simple Life. Yep. Welcome, Sal.
Thank you, Liz. I'm happy to be here.
Yes, and you've been on the show before.
Yes.
And I'm very excited about our topic today.
Okay.
Because I've seen when you were here before to talk about your book, A Simple Life.
Right.
And today we're going to be talking about a subject that everyone likes to talk about, and that's happiness.
Right. Yes.
So, Sal, let's start out by asking, so what is happiness?
Well, happiness is, we all know what happiness is, but when we search for it and strive for it, we find often that the things that make us unhappy come up more. We point out to the areas in our life that make us unhappy rather than focusing on what makes us happy. So I would say that first of all, if you do what you love to do, then you will be happy. A lot of times people take on jobs that make them a lot of money, but doesn't make them happy. And we have just one life to live here.
Yes.
So if we go after things that don't make us happy but make us money, we won't be happy.
Right.
So some people's priorities are making money, and some people's priorities are making ourselves happy. So you have to choose your priority. What is your priority? And sometimes, of course, you have to balance the two. So a little bit of happiness and a lot of money.
Well, and different people would probably define, if you were to line up 100 people and ask them what was happiness,
right,
you would probably get 100 different answers.
Yes.
Because people, think of happiness in different ways. As you mentioned, some people think, oh, when I get the house, when I get the car, when I get something else, then I'll be happy.
Right.
Or if I make enough money, then I'll be happy.
Right.
And they strive towards that, rather than looking at what brings them, for me, I would say happiness is more about having joy in your life.
Perfect. Yes, exactly. I agree with you 100%. When we go after things like a beautiful car, let's say a Rolls Royce or Mercedes or whatever, it will make us happy, but only for a short while, because the glamour that we place on an object that we want to achieve, it dissipates after you have it. So the happiness doesn't last too long.
Well, I think a lot of that is, we live in a very consumer-oriented society now. Right. A very disposable society. Right. And a society that is always after that quick fix.
Right.
We want it now.
Yes.
We don't want to have to wait. We don't have to work for it.
Right.
And the idea that you would have to actually work for happiness is kind of an odd idea.
It's very odd.
So what types of things make people happy?
Okay, let me go back first to your first question. What is happiness? And you said everyone will give you a different response. Yes, people will give you a different response verbally. But if you ask someone, what is happiness, or are you happy, they can feel inside if they're happy or not. And the way they talk to you will tell you if they're happy or not. If they're smiling, or they're happy, if they're joyous, if they're interacting with you in a manner that makes you also happy, then you know they're happy. But they're worried and say, yeah, I make a lot of money, I'm happy. No, of course, they're not happy. So the feeling of happiness is what I'm talking about, not the idea of happiness. So, and then coming back to what you said later about this life being a fast-paced life, and people get trapped in it, and they try to do something which other people think they should do to make themselves look good, that will never make you happy. Happiness comes from inside out. It doesn't come from outside in, and you do have to work for it, unfortunately. And how do you work for it? The way you work for it is somewhat along the lines of making your lives simpler. You look at the issues in your life, and you have to really look at them honestly and let them go. Because issues, you make your own issues. You see, if you look at something and say, this is a tragedy, you will be unhappy. If you look at something and say, it's fine, I can work with it, you'll be much more likely to be happy.
Well, so what you're saying is that in a lot of ways, happiness is a state of mind.
Exactly.
A state of being, if you will.
Yes.
And stuff. It's choosing to be more optimistic than pessimistic.
Exactly.
In your life. especially in dealing with the challenges that we come across in everyday life.
Right, right.
You can, again, as you said, look at something and say, oh my God, this is horrific. It's the most worst, terrible thing that could happen in the world.
Right.
And, I just want to crawl under a rock.
Right.
Or you can say, well, wow, this is an interesting challenge. Yes. And what can I do to work through this?
Right.
And, like anything else, some challenges can be surmounting.
Yes.
Sometimes it would help to, step back maybe a little bit and say, hey, look, maybe I can't deal with the whole mountain right now,
right,
but I can take a little chunk out.
Yes, very, very good. If we start out working with things in our lives a bit at a time, a small piece at a time, then we can chip away at it. And ultimately, that whole crumble of a problem falls away. This whole pile of problem falls away. It's like I was watching a program on PBS some years back, and they had a drop, a grain of sand falling, and it built up into a pile like this. And then one grain fell, and just this one grain disarranged the whole pile so that it went from like this to like flat. So the work that we do initially may not seem to you to be very important at producing a lot of results, but slowly and surely as you work at it, you come to a point where just one tiny effort makes the whole pile go away.
It's something that many of us have heard about in the last few years, called the tipping point.
Yes.
You get to a point where you've got to fall one way or another,
right?
Or the point of collapse, for some,
right?
Quite often we hear with people that have drug and alcohol or other substance abuse issues,
right,
and stuff, that they get to the bottom,
yes,
and stuff. They hit the wall,
right,
and stuff, and that would be, in other terms, a tipping point.
Right.
It gets to a point where they have to make a decision.
Yeah.
And quite often I find a lot of people, rather than make decisions proactively,
yes,
tend to avoid making decisions,
yes,
and then get caught up in that kind of flow of life,
right,
and then since they don't feel that they're controlling things,
right,
and instead they feel that everything's out of control, and
right,
when you feel in that way, it typically brings on things like worry, stress, concern. It makes it difficult for people to feel happy, right?
Very, very true. Very true.
So what other kinds of things prevent people from feeling happy? And what are some of the common things that, people focus on that kind of takes them away from, being, in a happy space?
Well, there's just one major thing, is that every experience of life, if you look at it with worry, it'll make you unhappy. If you look at it with acceptance, it'll make you happy, or at least at peace. So it's not many different things. On the surface, it may seem like many different things, like relationship problems, money problems, job problems, your kid problems, depression problems, which practically everyone has, and headaches, whatever. And all of that is due to the fact that you're not accepting your life as it is. And if you accept your life as it is, the inner resources open up and allow you to make changes. And sometimes you don't even have to do anything. The changes just happen by themselves because you accepted your life.
So kind of in the golden words is the serenity period.
Okay.
Instead of to, know the things that you can change,
yes,
know the things that you can't,
right,
and have the wisdom to know the difference between the two.
Yes.
So one of the things is, so what types of things make people sad? I mean, we talked about, it's a, part of it is a viewpoint.
Yes.
And it's a focus.
Right.
But is it solely just having a particular perspective where they're almost looking for what's wrong with things? Or, certainly sometimes, there are things where people get caught up in a series of situations, right, that kind of compound and spin out of control.
Right.
And that can cause, great stress. And with great stress, a lot of the times comes sadness or
right,
a loss or things like that.
Well, most people if you gave them a choice whether they want to be right or whether they want to be happy, they would choose they want to be right. I'm sorry to say that. Maybe they will not say it, but they behave like that. They want to be proved right, so they want the belief systems to be proved right. And that is what causes problems. Because if you look at life, life leads you a certain way, and if you go along with it, you'll be fine. But people say, no, this is not right. That person did it wrong, or my boss treated me wrong. My kids are not paying attention to me. I'm not getting the proper amount of money. You have a certain belief system, and you want the world to revolve around your belief system. And that leads to unhappiness, because you definitely cannot control life. You cannot control the world.
Right, right. Well, because you can't control other people.
Exactly.
Other people have, we're all individual.
Right.
We all have our own viewpoints.
Right.
We all have our own backgrounds, filters, that have, from our experiences, how we were brought up, our cultures, our experiences in life. And we think that, oh yes, this is how everyone else experiences the world.
Right.
And everyone else has a completely different viewpoint. Much like when you're driving on the freeway.
Right.
I think that's a classic example. Somebody cuts you off.
Right.
So you have a choice in that moment and stuff. And one of the best things I ever heard that really helped me change my entire viewpoint about it was, somebody cuts you off and you can curse at them and stuff, but you don't know what's going on with them.
Right.
For all you know, they just got a phone call and their spouse has been in an accident and is in the hospital and they're needing to get, to their side.
Right.
Or, someone is sick and they need to get, somewhere. So you don't really know what's going on with that other person. You make up these stories based on your experiences and apply them to them rather than just saying, I guess maybe they have something that's important, and geez, it's going to take a whole 5 seconds off my life. Let's just let them go.
Right. Right.
And like you said, to be a little more accepting, of others and understanding.
Yes. And gracious.
And gracious. I think gracious is an important word.
Right.
But another example might be, kind of being like the cork in the ocean, right? Just kind of bobbing along with it, kind of accepting and going with the flow. Not meaning that you accept everything that goes on, because certainly you should have boundaries and stand up for your boundaries and your beliefs. But rather than being the hard wall, that the sea has to constantly batter against.
Right, right. You have to be flexible. And for those who are watching at home, I would just ask you to think about something that perhaps you don't like, something that makes you, someone who makes you angry. Now, if you hold that anger in your mind, you will notice that you are unhappy. You're not making the other person unhappy by your anger. If you hold anger, resentment, hate, fear, you're making yourself unhappy. So you have a choice. What kind of emotion do you want in your life? A lot of people get caught up with righteous revenge or righteous anger or righteous pride. I'm better than them. So if you hold any of these emotions in your mind, you will notice the feeling in your life, in your body. You will notice the feeling in your body is not good. It has a negative effect on your body, on your acupuncture system. So when you feel negative events, negative feelings, because you think you're right, you're harming yourself. If you knew that you had a choice, whether you wish to harm yourself or whether you wish to let go of the negative emotion, what would you do? People would let it go, but they don't have this knowledge, many of them. But if you just go to a quiet place and feel your negative emotions in your body, you will notice how much of a difference it makes, how much unhealthy results it produces, both physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. So what you really have to do is make a choice to let go of all these negative emotions and work towards the higher emotions. The higher emotions being love, kindness, charity, helpfulness, service, inspiration, reason, all those kind of things.
Well, and like you said, that tenseness in your body, holding those things in. Years ago, I was talking to somebody about, how some people carry such resentments. I mean, it's interesting when you see someone who, like, they bring up the subject like of an ex-partner,
right.
and oh, they did this, they did that, blah blah blah. Oh, when did this happen? 20 years ago. For 20 years, you've been focusing on this?
Right.
It's like, wow. And, when we get ourselves into those high stress positions, it's been medically proven now.
Right.
And stuff that affects our bodies. And that causes disease, which is also dis-ease.
Exactly.
Because you're not at ease within yourself.
Right.
So I think it is very important for people to kind of learn to do that. So while we're on the topic of resentments and things like that, some people have other. Well, how does happiness, like for example, with mental health? So people think that people have depression,
right,
and stuff. It's because they're not happy.
No, it's because they're angry at themselves for not doing what they want to do. They feel bound. Mm-hmm. They feel like they want to do something, but they feel there are too many barriers for them to accomplish what they want to do. And so they hem themselves in, and that anger turns inward and creates depression. Mm-hmm. So if you don't want to experience depression, what you can do is accept your life, first of all, as a first step, as it is, and then make small steps, like we had talked about earlier. Mm-hmm. Take small steps towards your goal. That way, what happens is your mind and your heart begins to respect you. Mm-hmm. You begin to respect yourself. And so your self-esteem moves up, and you say, okay, I do have the power to change my life. And with that, your unconscious mind comes along and helps you to achieve what you want to achieve. So basically, then you move in the direction of the opposite of depression, happiness, joy, and inspiration, and all those things.
Yeah, and as someone who's actually, I suffer from periodic depression, right, and most of mine has been triggered by situational circumstances.
Right.
And I found that even for myself, first time I ever had a very significant depression.
Right.
I found myself at a point where I was just staying in bed.
Right.
Back in the days, I had my pager on. I'd fall asleep with my hand on the pager in case a client called, because I didn't want my clients to suffer. But just couldn't find the strength to like get up and function, and the economy was tanking, and other issues, and I finally got to a point where I went, you know what? Somebody told me, well, act as if.
Perfect.
So I did that. I said, okay, I'm going to get up, and I'm going to figure out something, that I can go and talk to my clients about. The whole economy's in the tank, but that's fine. We'll find something. So I would get up and I would go out to my clients, and I would just act as if everything was great. Hi, I'm here. I have this new thing I want to talk to you about.
Right.
Didn't matter that nobody had anything going on or anything else. But it got me back out. And once, and then you start feeling a little better, and then that feeds on itself. Right. And it becomes almost like the snowball, right?
Exactly.
You start gathering steam, the snowball gets bigger, you feel better, and you work your way back out of it.
Exactly. They say that about 1 in 3 people in the U.S. and probably more outside the U.S. are chronically depressed. Mm-hmm. And most of us, like maybe 90% of us, have experienced depression in some way or the other. And when we experience severe depression, it has to do, I think, with setting ourselves up, wanting some goals which are difficult. Mm-hmm. So it only happens, I think, to people who really severely challenge themselves. Mm-hmm. If you just go along and you say, okay, I'm not going to try to make myself happy or change my life or make myself a better person, you probably won't experience depression. Mm-hmm. But if you have higher goals, both external and internal, then the chances for unhappiness and depression are greater. Now, this unhappiness can be changed by looking at yourself honestly. If you find that you get angry in certain situations, then at the end of the day, go home and say, okay, what made me angry? Well, this person did something, and he was very rude to me in front of a lot of people, and I felt ashamed and I felt angry. So then you look at that situation and you say, okay, that's fine. He did not make me angry. I chose to be angry. Mm-hmm. And he said certain things which I chose to be ashamed about. Mm-hmm. So you can look at the things that touched you and say, okay, it's not a big deal. Let's say, for example, you earn, maybe you're on the bottom 4th quintile of your office support staff, and he said, oh, this guy, he doesn't make any money, we don't have to listen to him. That made you feel ashamed, for example. You can say, okay, no, that's his opinion. I'm happy with where I am. I don't have to feel ashamed. So we can change that. We can change our life by accepting it. And if you feel you're worth more, then you can start working on your resume and go look for another job while you're working there. So you don't have to really be hemmed in. Your life is your choice.
Well, and the other thing there too, I think, is that's important is that, understand that, sometimes when we get upset or something, oh God, that really upset me, and stuff, when you take the time to reflect. And so sometimes you may find, why did that, it's something silly. Why did that make me so upset? And then, if you think about it and kind of mull it around long enough, sometimes you'll find that, that reminds me of an incident that happened when I was 6 years old in elementary school, or, things like that.
Yes.
So, understand that, when things trigger us, it's not necessarily the event that's going on right in front of us, but it sometimes can be a connection to something from our past that's getting kind of stirred up again. And then the other thing is sometimes it just has absolutely nothing to do with us at all.
Yeah, they're having a bad day.
Yeah, other people, have their way of expressing themselves. And, we've always heard, some people have anger issues. Well, yeah, some people may have anger issues. They may have entitlement issues.
That's a big one. That's a big one.
Other things like that. And, I think for, at least for myself, I find I got to a point where I realized I can choose whether I let that bother me, because I know it has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with them.
Yes. Entitlement, I'm glad you brought that up, because that is a major problem for our society. We feel we are entitled. For example, this lady was telling me that my father is so rich, and he did not. I went to him for some money, and he wouldn't give me money. And the problem with that is she felt that she was entitled to get money from her father, just because he was rich. Now, that's a sense of entitlement. She's a grown-up woman. You don't have to feel that your parents have to support you even when you're past 30. So, this is a sense of entitlement. The other sense of entitlement comes along when you think your government owes you something, or you feel your partner owes you something, or the people should treat you nice. You're entitled to be respected or treated nice. This sense of entitlement is so deep in people that we constantly get blindsided by it, because people don't treat us the way we expect them to, and we think, oh, I was brought up right. These people are brought up wrong, and they're mistreating me.
Well, and I think that's an area where boundaries come in, and standing up for your boundaries, and letting people know what is acceptable to you or not, because. For example, if you have a friend that every time you schedule a time to go to lunch with them, cancels at the last moment, right? You might consider just saying, okay, they've done this to me 3 times in a row. I'm going to set a boundary, and I'm no longer going to agree to come to lunch with them. If they want to see me, they can come to my house.
Perfect. Yes. You do have to set boundaries with people, and sometimes you have to let certain people go from your life. If they constantly continue to create disruptions in your life, you do have to let them go.
Yeah. So, we're getting kind of close to the end, but I want to find out, one of the things that we talked about was, as you sow, so shall you reap.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So what does that mean to you in terms of happiness?
Well, this idea of karma in the East or in the West, as you sow, so shall you reap, is prevalent in all religious cultures and all world cultures. That whatever you do comes back at you. So if you want to be happy, treat people right, and be kind and charitable and helpful. Be service oriented. Like volunteer stuff. And so you do things that contribute to other people's lives. That is putting out. And then in return, what happens is that you receive it. It's not like a one-to-one equation. If you do something kind out of the expectation of receiving something, that's not really kindness. It's like a calculated move.
Yes.
So you have to really be genuinely kind and friendly and hospitable and loving. When you behave that way, when you let go of the negative emotions and behave in a positive manner in your life, it comes back at you, and it builds up, snowballs.
Yeah. And I agree. There is a big difference between doing something because you're wanting to do it,
yes,
and not having any expectations.
Perfect.
At all of
Yes.
any return.
Yeah.
Because if you put conditions on it,
Right.
even if it's only your own conditions in your
yes.
own mind,
Yes.
instead you're setting the other person up
Yes.
for failure.
Exactly.
So Sal, what are some just parting comments you can give us with regards to, how people can seek, seek getting to a space where they can truly feel happy?
Okay. I would say that try and find what is your purpose in life. And whatever that purpose is, work towards it. And in working towards it, be honest with yourself. Look at your defects and realize that they are just temporary things. And so whatever defect you think you have, instead of fighting with it, just let it go. Give it up. And then work on building up positive reservoirs of energy in your life, like kindness, helpfulness, charity, things like I talked about before. And love is a very important emotion, an energy. Actually, it's an energy. Feeling kindly towards fellow human beings. Hold that in your heart, and that will dissolve all the negatives. It may take some time, but it will do it.
Yes, absolutely. And we want everyone in our audience to be happy.
Yes.
So, Sal, also, if our readers want to check out your book, A Simple Life, where would they find that?
It's on Amazon, and you can search. There are quite a few books called A Simple Life, so you'd have to type in A Simple Life along with my name, Sal Dossani, and it'll come up. And I hope you read it and enjoy it. I think you'll find it useful.
Well, great. And Sal, it's always a pleasure to have you here on this show. So thank you again for coming.
Thank you, Liz.
I hope we have more conversations with you. And for our viewers, thank you for tuning in to In Our Community. And thank you to our crew for assisting in this evening's show.